Do you ever look in the rearview mirror of your life and just ache? Not just a fleeting thought, but a deep, heavy ache in your soul for the time that's gone. The wasted years. Maybe for you, the waste looks like a decade spent in a dead-end job that stole your passion. Maybe it was a relationship that left you broken, taking years of your heart that you can never get back. Maybe the years were lost in the fog of an addiction, a season of wandering far from God, or a period of grief so heavy you could barely function. You look at the calendar, you see the date, Friday, June 13th, 2025, and you do the math. You compare yourself to others. They seem so much further ahead. They built a career, they raise a family, they save the money, and you feel like you're standing at the starting line of a race that's already halfway over. The enemy loves to whisper in our ear during these moments. He tells us, it's too late for you. You missed your chance. The damage is done. Your best years are behind you. That feeling of irreversible loss, of spiritual and chronological debt, can be one of the heaviest burdens we carry. But today, I want to speak a promise over you. A promise so audacious, so full of grace that it can silence the voice of regret forever. It comes from the prophet Joel, and it is God's direct response to our wasted years. He says, I will restore to you the years that the swarming locust has eaten. Today, we are going to dive into that breathtaking promise. But we're also going to tackle the second, active part of that promise, the part that requires our participation. It's not just a promise. It's a declaration followed by a command. God will restore what was lost, but we have to be ready. Before we can celebrate the restoration, we have to be honest about the devastation. The locusts in Joel were literal insects that came in swarms and devoured every green thing. They left behind nothing but barren fields and famine. It was a picture of total, consuming loss. What have the locusts eaten in your life? Maybe it was the locust of procrastination. You knew what God was calling you to do, but you waited for the perfect time, and the years just slipped away. Maybe it was a locust of a bad decision. One choice, one turned down the wrong path, and it led to a decade of consequences. Or maybe it was the locust of fear. Fear of failure. Fear of what others would think. A fear that paralyzed you and kept you in a cage of comfort while your dreams starved to death. Perhaps it wasn't even your fault. Maybe it was a locust of an illness, a betrayal by someone you trusted, or a responsibility that you had to carry that put your own life on hold. Whatever the cause, the result is the same. A field that looks barren, a heart that feels behind, a spirit that is weighed down by the ghost of what could have been. Now, here's the most critical part of the context of Joel's promise. God was speaking to the nation of Israel, who had suffered this devastation as a direct result of their own disobedience. They had wandered from him. They had caused their own famine. And yet, the promise of restoration still stood. This tells us something vital. The promise to restore the wasted years is not just for the victims of circumstance. It's for the architects of their own disaster. It's for the one who made the bad decision. It's for the one who wandered. Your past mistakes do not disqualify you from this promise. They make you a primary candidate for it. God's grace is not a reward for the perfect. It is a rescue for the repentant. So if you're sitting there thinking, but I wasted those years myself, it's my own fault, then listen closely. This promise is especially for you. God is saying, even the years you squandered, even the fields you let lie fallow, I can and I will bring a harvest from them. This isn't just wishful thinking. This is God's pattern throughout history. He is a master architect of comebacks. His entire story is filled with heroes whose resumes are filled with detours, delays, and disasters. Let's look at the blueprint. Joseph had every reason to believe his life was wasted. At 17, he's betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, and stripped of his identity. He spends years as a slave in Egypt. Then, after being falsely accused, he's thrown into a dungeon. He languishes in prison for years. By any human standard, the 13 years from the pit to the palace were utterly wasted. They were stolen from him. But God's restoration isn't about simply erasing the past. It's about repurposing it. Think about it. Where did Joseph learn large-scale administration? By managing the household of Potiphar, a high-ranking official. Where did he learn to deal with difficult people and complex logistics? by managing the entire prison. The wasted years as a slave and a prisoner were the very training ground for his destiny as the Prime Minister of Egypt. The suffering didn't just give him skills. It gave him character. It stripped him of his youthful pride and forged in him a deep, unshakable dependence on God. When God restored Joseph, he didn't just give him back his freedom. He elevated him to a position of immense power and used his past pain to save the entire known world from famine, including the very brothers who betrayed him. This is a divine equation. Restoration is not erasure. It is redemption. God takes the very material of your wasted years and uses it as a foundation for your future. If anyone looked like they were past their prime, it was Moses. He spends his first 40 years as a prince of Egypt, the pinnacle of power and education. Then, after a fatal mistake, he spends the next 40 years in exile as a shepherd in the middle of nowhere, a fugitive, a has-been. Imagine Moses at age 79. He's a shepherd in Midian. His life in the palace is a distant memory. His calling to deliver his people seems like a youthful, arrogant dream. His years have been wasted in the desert. And then at age 80, he sees a burning bush. God didn't see an old shepherd. He saw a man who was finally ready. The first 40 years in Egypt taught Moses how the world's power structures worked. But the next 40 wasted years in the desert were even more important. They stripped him of his pride, his self-reliance, and his anger. They taught him patience, endurance, and how to survive in the wilderness, the very skills he would need to lead millions of stubborn people through that same wilderness for another 40 years. God restored Moses' wasted time by launching his life's true mission when most people are retiring. This proves a vital truth. Your age is no barrier to God's restoration. It is never, ever too late to begin the most important chapter of your life. The promise is real. God's power is undeniable. But the promise has a partner. Us, the rain can be promised, but we have to prepare the soil. So, how do we get ready for God to restore our wasted years? The first step is always to turn around. In the story of the prodigal son, the son wasted his entire inheritance. He hit rock bottom. The restoration process didn't begin while he was still feeding the pigs. It began the moment he made a decision and said, "I will get up and go back to my father." You have to stop running from God and run to him. This means repentance. Not just feeling sorry, but turning away from the things that led to the waste in the first place. You cannot expect God to restore a field you are still actively letting the locust devour. The moment you turn back to the Father, he is already running to meet you, robe and ring in hand. You must stop seeing your past as a liability and start asking God to show you how it was a training ground. This requires a radical shift in perspective. Ask yourself these questions. What did I learn in that dead-end job? Patience? A new skill. What did that painful relationship teach me about what I truly value? Empathy? Red flags. What did that season of failure forge in me? Humility? Resilience. Your past pain can become your platform. Your greatest mess can become your most powerful message. When you redefine your wasted years as your education, you give God the raw materials he needs to build your future. Joseph had to see his time in prison as preparation before he could step into the palace. You cannot drive forward if you're staring intently into the rearview mirror. To be ready for your future, you must make peace with your past. This means forgiveness. It might mean forgiving the person who hurt you, not because they deserve it, but because your unforgiveness is an anchor holding you to the past. And just as importantly, it means forgiving yourself. So many of us are held captive by self-condemnation long after God has forgiven us. You have to accept the grace that you are so freely given. When God says he has removed your sin as far as the east is from the west, believe him. Release the regret. Restoration rarely begins with a lightning bolt from heaven. It often begins with quiet faithfulness in the season you are in right now. Where was Moses when God called him? He was just doing his job, tending his father-in-law's sheep. Where was Joseph? He was faithfully managing the prison, using his gifts in a forgotten place. Where was Peter after his denial? He had gone back to his old job, fishing. Don't despise your current season, even if it feels small or insignificant. How you handle your current responsibilities is the audition for your future promotion. Be the best employee at your dead-end job. Be the most loving person in your small circle of friends. Use your gifts right where you are. Faithfulness in the mundane is the fertilizer for miraculous restoration. The promise of Joel 2 verse 25 is not that God will turn back the clock. The years are gone. The promise is infinitely better. It's that God's restorative power is so great. He can bring a harvest so abundant in your future that it compensates for all the famines of your past. He doesn't just give you back what the locusts ate. He often restores with interest. The joy of your future will be so profound that it heals the pain of your past. Joseph's power as prime minister was greater than anything he lost. Peter's impact at Pentecost was greater than his failure at the campfire. Your restoration might not look like you expect. God may not restore that exact relationship, but he'll give you a new capacity for love and connection you never had before. He may not give you back that same career path, but he'll open a door to a purpose so fulfilling it uses every detour you ever took. The locusts of regret, failure, and fear may have eaten your years, but God is the Lord of the harvest. He can make up for lost time. A new season is coming. So today, on June 13th, 2025, make a decision. Stop mourning what was lost and start preparing for what is promised. The soil of your heart needs to be tilled. The seeds of faithfulness need to be sown. God is ready to send the rain. The question is, will you be ready? If this message of restoration and second chances spoke to you today, please hit that like button so more people can find it. Subscribe for more messages of hope and purpose. And share this video with someone you know who feels like their best years are behind them. Thank you for being here. Get ready. Your harvest is coming.